Who in this room, this is me playing a little bit with you, who in this room knows the largest oil well found in the United States in the 1970s? Where was it found? In the 70s. Most of you are too young.
West Texas?
No? Are there any other thoughts?
North Slope.
North Slope, no, as well.
Alaska.
It's a trick question, Alaska. It's a trick question, I apologize. You knew it was going to be a trick question, I assume. It's Detroit, Michigan. You believe me or not? It's Detroit, Michigan because after 5 years of imposing CAFE standards, fuel mileage economy standards, the car fleet improves so significantly that it dropped our demand curve by 2.5 to 3 million barrels a day, from which it started growth again. But that's like finding an oil field of 2.5 million barrels a day. You don't have to actually find the physical stuff. You can find it all over the place on how we use it or don't use it. And you can point to all sorts of technologies or areas where we could be actually finding oil without drilling in the ground right now across the whole demand spectrum as we go forward. Who in this room has heard of Thalheim, Germany? I have. I've been there. Well, Thalheim, Germany to me is a very significant place. It was, until about 2 years ago, the center of the solar industry in Europe. Now been replaced by China. Also the center of the windmill industry in Europe, even biodiesel, biofuel industry. This is what used to be called Eastern Germany. This town of Thalheim, before the fall of the Iron Curtain, if you lived there, you never saw the sun probably for most of your life. There was just a black cloud. I mean, literally a black cloud over this area. It was the center of, coal production, electricity production from coal. It was the center of a petrochemical industry and refining industry for the old Soviet machines, oil industry. And the refining and petrochemical industry in the Soviet world, I'm being unkind now, was not like ours. Ours was a very sophisticated technology where you were reducing pollution in many cases dramatically. They just actually took a hammer and kept hitting the oil like this until you got the stuff out you wanted, which meant it's polluting like crazy. You just couldn't see the sky. And now, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the German government said, we have a problem on our hands. It's not so much the pollution. None of those people have any jobs because those factories, those coal mines, those refineries just can't compete. They're dead in the water. What are we going to do? Well, they decided to create some jobs. They created a job subsidy program, and then they said, let's think about industries of the future. And get people to hire in companies that want to go into new industrial areas like solar and technologies for windmills, et cetera, and they drove that. And after 15 years, this town has clean, beautiful blue skies. What it was, the open pit coal mine, is now a lake with sailboats on it. Massive production of solar PVs, windmills, et cetera, in the area. But this is because they subsidized job creation. I forget how much it was over $1 million Deutschmarks a year for a number of years for each job you created. That's a great inducement to go out and build a factory in new areas. This all happened in 15 years. That is very fast. Now, it was tremendous concerted effort to do this, but it actually worked. Now, the current crisis is threatening what happened there because also what they did was create a subsidy program for if you put solar photovoltaics on your roof, you had a feed-in tariff that you were paid well above the market rate for your power you produced. It was subsidized by the state, so you would buy the PV modules that are being produced in Germany. They were quite consistent. But some things happened, so most of those PVs are coming now from China rather than Germany, but also they can't afford the subsidies, basically. So there's a challenge, but also a creative opportunity, which highlighted because it's 15 years as we think about it and go forward. If the U.S. right now snapped its fingers and said, we want to have the same average car fleet in the United States as they do in Europe, what difference do you think that will make to our oil consumption?
Huge.
Huge, absolutely. And by the way, European cars, there's some really small ones. It's some really big Mercedes, BMWs, Audis, Renaults, you name it. Just like we do, big and small. It's probably the same mix. We would be using 3.5 million barrels a day less oil in the United States. Now, think about that from a global citizen point of view. Other countries need to develop, maybe easier to develop on oil. Think about us from a national security point of view. And when I use the term national security, I think about economic security. The reason the International Energy Agency was formed in the mid-1970s, I was senior economist there in the early 80s, was for security reasons, economic security. If you didn't have oil, the economy couldn't survive. So what can you do to ensure you have your energy system working in a reliable fashion so you don't suffer the economic damage that may well be there if you think about it, if you don't have it. Just another little comment. Right now, all the forecasts say, I don't care who makes them, they all go the same direction, say in the next 30 years or so, China and India will probably double their energy consumption. And by the way, when they double their energy consumption, they're probably going to need to import 70 to 75% of it. Well, if you look at the forecast for the United States, we're doing exactly the same thing. We're not doubling our consumption, we're going to be importing 70 to 75% of our energy. Well, I'm not sure where we're going to get it all from. All of us importing 70% of our energy form. So part of the feature of the great game is how do we think like a global citizen? And how do we define what a global citizen really is when we go forward? Now, some facts about the world we live in too. Right now in the world, there's relentless nationalism going on. All over the world, particularly around the energy sector. That's a challenge to all of us who think globally, and think in a globalized world. But it's rampant, and it's going to continue, become more forceful as something to deal with, and as a feature as we go forward. Well, then you take that and say, in fact, depends how you define it, somewhere between 75% and 90% of the available oil and gas reserves that we might want to produce, whoever we might be, is closed to foreign private companies. It's controlled by state-owned governments and companies. So our companies don't have a lot of places to go to. If anywhere between 10 and 20% is available to them, the other 80% is closed off. That's a feature of our market right now. And it's a feature of tomorrow's market. Those will probably not open up as we go forward. Another fact right now, a little bit different fact. Have you ever heard of the European Union Plan 20-20-20? Anyone in this room ever hear of that plan 20-20-20? It's a very simple thought. You know, we're going to have renewables at 20% of our portfolio by 2020, increase efficiency by 20% by 2020, and reduce carbon emissions by 20% by 2020. Can they get it? I'm not sure. Can they get there? I'm not sure. But they have a vision. I'm just saying because they have a vision. Probably won't realize it, but they have a vision. Has anybody ever heard of Desert Tech in this room? Desert Tech? Not many Americans have heard of Desert Tech. One man has. Desert Tech is a project, public-private partnership project with the World Bank, European, North African governments, and a lot of big European companies to, by the year 2050, have a large patch of the Sahara Desert producing solar power with transmission lines into Europe that will meet all incremental demand as Europe goes forward for power production. Now this has a lot of challenges, this project, not a question. The technologies have not been proven in that area in terms of the temperatures, they're very high temperatures, and the wind and dust storms, which require different features for sealants on the solar PV modules, but it's going ahead as an experiment. It's being coordinated by the World Bank and a group in Marseille, France, and trying to put a demonstration project in place by 5 or 6 years, being testing things out. That's a vision. Is it the right vision? I'm not sure, but they have a vision where they're going. And people are united around this. You have private companies investing money in this, and not insignificant sums of money in this. China announced, I think 4 years